So it's really, really awesome to see this turnout here tonight. Anyway, I'm going to hand it over to somebody that's a really, really critical part of all of this from the Twin Cities Coalition, Linda Henn. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you.
Well, thank you all for coming tonight. Like Eric said, I'm the program coordinator for the Twin Cities Coalition for Healthy Youth, which was begun 5 years ago to address the high rate of alcohol and drug use in our communities. Marin County has one of the highest in the nation and the state. I'm sure it's no surprise to you. And dealing with stress and anxiety and pressure is one of the root causes and risk factors that can lead to substance abuse. So that's why we collaborated with Hall Middle School, Deb Blum, and Parent Education to bring you more information. So like I said, the Twin Cities Coalition was created in 2011 to change community norms with respect to the underage use of alcohol and tobacco and other drugs. And our mission is to mobilize across all sectors of the community and work collaboratively to delay the age of onset in underage drinking and significantly reduce the incidence. So, Maureen, like I said, we have one of the highest rates of teen substance use, with 57% of 11th graders report using alcohol or drugs in the past 30 days, and 26% of 9th graders. And 34% of 11th graders report chronic sad or hopeless feelings, and 17 and 20% have had thoughts of suicide. Our teens are under tremendous pressure. Stress, anxiety, and pressure are facets of our teens' lives. Sometimes these feelings can lead to escape and survival in the use of substances. Tonight we want you to hear from experts and young adults to gain perspective on how to recognize symptoms and, most importantly, what you can do about it. The teenage years are different for every teen, and the solutions are varied as well. We hope you will leave here tonight with one thing that you can put into practice to make a difference in your home. So now Deb Blum, the parent coordinator at Hall Middle School, will explain the process and moderate this evening.
Hi. Thank you for coming. So we do have, I think we're expecting more people. I'm not sure how many more, but if you guys want, if you find that you can't hear or something, we don't have microphones, but you can squeeze in. There are some seats up front. I know it's always scary to be in the front, but I first just wanted to thank the people who were involved. Sorry to take the time to do that, but it seems really important that we thank all our panelists and all of you for coming. I mean, this is obviously like such a tribute to a community who really cares. But I also wanted to thank Linda and Vicki Van for their contributions as it relates to the Twin Cities Coalition. I also want to thank our administration. We really have an incredibly supportive administration around all issues of parent and child scenarios. And Lori Dubin, who's not here, but she was very involved in planning this as well as Jennifer Grellman. And Jennifer is not only on the panel tonight, she has multiple roles, and I'll let her explain it in just one moment, but one of her roles is at Hall Middle School. She's actually she's the founder of Being Adept, and she's the person who is we have Being Adept here, and our kids are learning through that program, and if you don't know about it, Google it, because it's a really great program. So, but as Linda said, that I run the parent ed here. I'm also a parent coach, and I have two boys that go to Hall, 6th grader and an 8th grader, and I was thinking, oh, my son's going to Redwood next year, but no, he's going to Redwood this year. That was oh my God, it's in the fall. So I'm going to moderate tonight. But before we get started and I tell you about the process, I just want to acknowledge a couple of things about this topic. The topic itself is anxiety producing, right? It is. It's a scary topic, and I encourage people to, take a moment if you need to take a breath if it's seeming a little overwhelming, because it can be, and there are going to be things that come up that you're going to be surprised about. There are also going to be things that come up that might make you think, I wish I had done better, I wish I had known that before, or maybe even some self-criticism, or that there's some sense of that the parents are to blame. And we just want you to know that is not the case at all. We're really here just to give you information, to help you to make informed decisions, to be able to help your kids. And as Linda said, one thing, I look at it and say, if you walked away with one thing that you felt that you could bring home, that's awesome. That's a good day, right? And especially if you actually do something about it. So as far as how it's going to go tonight, we're going to try to keep it pretty casual. Our panelists are going to introduce themselves in just 1 minute, And then, as you may have seen, we have some cards and some pencils. They're on the seat. And so a couple of things about that. So we encourage you to write a question down if you have one, if it's on your mind while they're talking. Feel free to put the name of the person who you would like to ask it to if there's someone in particular. And then we're going to go through and answer some of those questions. The reason why I wanted to really emphasize this, though, is that we are recording this tonight. So if there is something that you want to ask but you don't feel comfortable, definitely put it onto a card if you don't want your voice to be heard. We are hoping to take live questions as well. But we do want to start off. We're going to start off with some questions that we've already solicited from parents and to sort of frame the conversation. So we have 2 young adults, I think that's a great way to put it, on the panel, and then we have some of our adult experts. And so I have kind of 2 things going on in their introductions. Our experts on the panel are going to talk a little. They're just going to give a couple-minute introduction and tell you a little bit about maybe who they are and why this is important to them. Perhaps a little nugget of wisdom that they really want to make sure that you take away from tonight. And then our young adults are going to talk a little bit more about their story. So they're going to introduce themselves and they're going to take a little extra time. And they're going to tell you their specific story. So why don't we get started with that and then we'll move into some questions. So Jessica.
Hi everybody, my name is Jessica Colvin. I'm the Wellness Director for Tamalpais Union High School District. I was hired about 1.5 years ago to assess the health and wellness needs of our district, specifically at Redwood, but also district-wide. And I'm happy to report that we have launched our first wellness center at Redwood High School. As of the fall, our physical doors just opened about 2 weeks ago, and the students are coming in, which is wonderful. We are offering health, mental health, substance abuse, and reproductive health services for students. And we offer both direct services and prevention and education. So we do school-wide events, we do workshops in classrooms, we do training for students, we have youth development as part of our program, and a lot of community partnerships. So there's a lot of community agencies who serve teens in the community, but they didn't have a way into the school. And so the Wellness Center is coordinating those services on campus. And we've actually leveraged about 90 hours of free service right now. For students. Of course, we look at quality over quantity, and not everybody has been a perfect match, but some of the services have been excellent, and our students are using them at capacity, so that's very exciting. I'm new to Marin. I was running wellness centers in San Francisco for 13 years, and I'm learning about this community and the incredible stress and pressure that the students feel around here. So I think there's so many different dynamics that go into stress. There's relationships, family dynamics, homework, trying to fit in, social media, college admissions, sports, sleep, and so many more. And I think that what students have told me, so the one thing I can say is that I've done a lot of focus groups and meetings with students to hear what they have to say, even though I'm relatively new. And what they say is that there's these unspoken pressures in this community that you have to get into this perfect school, and that leads to getting a good job, and that leads to being very comfortable financially, and that's happiness. So there is pressure starting in middle school and in high school that you have to follow that track in this community. And some of it is not from the parents, it's from just peers or the academics, but that stress is real and really significant for a lot of our teens. Also, the other thing I wanted to mention is I've seen drug use and abuse coming from 2 different directions. One is performance enhancing, and one is for escape. So I've talked to students and asked them about what kind of drugs and alcohol they use, and they tell me, one of the kids told me from a peer resource class, we drink to black out. And I was like, what? And they say, we are so stressed out during the week, we party so hard on the weekends, we don't care if we black out, we just want to forget everything that happened during the week. So there's really extreme level of escapism. And then there's also another type of drug abuse that's happening in the district, which is students are using performance enhancing drugs. So right now there's a lot of cocaine going on where students are using cocaine before school and during school and for their sports teams because they can supposedly do better in those areas. And then they're also taking a lot of prescription drugs that are not prescribed to them. So taking friends Adderall and Ritalin. So I just think it's really interesting that stress is causing both this way to escape, as well as a substance use for performance enhancing measures. So I look forward to our talk tonight.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Dina Enberg. I'm a certified addiction treatment counselor. I work At Muirwood Adolescent and Family Services, we treat adolescents here in the Bay Area, Marin. I've been working in addiction treatment for 15 years with adults and adolescents, and one of my roles at our Muirwood is I bring a lot of education and prevention into the local community. I'm also on the wellness board as a adolescent expert. So it's awesome to be here.
I'm Cameron. I'm a junior in high school at San Domenico, but for the past 2 years I went to Marin Catholic, so I've been around a bunch of schools. I've had anxiety and depression for that matter for as long as I can personally remember, and it really escalated at the end of 8th grade. Actually, at our graduation dance, I had a panic attack that there weren't enough parents around to know to take care of it, and so a couple of kids ended up calling an ambulance, and I was taken to the hospital that night. And since then, it took me about a year and a half to find a good regimen for me, but I'm very glad my parents reacted in a way that they wanted to help me, and they understood that I needed help, which I think is one of the most important things. As a junior in high school, I have tremendous stress on me. From my school, from expectations, from teachers, myself. It's just, high school is a really stressful time, and if you can't deal with it, and if you can't help your kids deal with it well, there will be issues. That's cheery. I'm on the teen board with Being Adept with Jennifer, and I work at the Marin County Youth Court on Thursdays, being either a jury member or it's like a defendant kind of. They have weird words for it. Like working with kids who have had more minor offenses in the law, and it's an alternative restorative justice program. You can ask me more about it if you want. I'm happy to answer.
Well, hi, I'm Jennifer Grellman, and I'm an adolescent and family psychotherapist with a practice in Corte Madera, so I see a lot of adolescents with all kinds of anxiety issues and certifications in eating disorders and substance abuse, and so I'm ultimately working with families as well, usually. I also have two young adults, I guess. I have a 20-year-old who went to Redwood High School, and a 24-year-old boy. My 20-year-old's a girl, and my 24-year-old is my son, and he went to a private school in San Francisco called Urban. So I have experience with both sort of the private school and the public school world. And then this Being Adept idea has been spoken about here. I'm the founder and the executive director of Being Adept, and this is a research and science-based nonprofit, and we work in middle schools. We have a very comprehensive curriculum for the prevention of drug and alcohol abuse and addiction. And we have wonderful young people like Mike working with the kids to teach them this curriculum. And we also have parent nights where we connect the curriculum and the parents, so the parents can talk to the kids about what they learned in school, and we're trying to get this connection so it's not such an obtuse area. So I really love adolescents. That's why I do all this stuff. I love working with them, and maybe because I had a tough adolescence, so I can connect with some of their stuff, and it's just really great work for me, but it's not without its difficulties sometimes.
Hi everyone, I'm Mike Bonasso, as Jennifer kind of just mentioned, and I've been with Being Adept for, I want to say almost a year now, coming up on a year I'd say, and I met Jennifer last year, and I really liked kind of her mission statement and what she stood for, and I think drug education is really important especially at the ages that we're targeting. And so I'm one of the people, we have 4 or 5 individuals that go into the classrooms, and I teach the curriculum that Jennifer designed and came up with. And so we have lessons on opiates, specifically marijuana, alcohol, there's stress busters, decoding the media literacy, things like that. And so we go into details about these things, and we talk to them, and we help them kind of facilitate them to participate in the classroom and understand the material, instead of just having someone come in and say, don't do drugs. That's not kind of Jennifer's mission statement. And so we go in and we educate them, and we allow them to make their own decision based on the facts, and kind of based on how these drugs affect you, and how these drugs can really affect your life and the lives of the people around you. And so we allow the children to make their own decision, never really say do or don't. We obviously hope that they leave the classroom thinking it's not worth it. Some might and some might not think that. That's our hope. But I'm the person that goes in and does that. So there's a bunch of us, and I think it's a really effective program. I went through DARE myself, which we had a cop come in. Sorry, talk about it. But we had a police officer come in, and I don't mean to bash it or anything, because I think it had good intentions, but we had a police officer come in, and he said, don't do drugs because I'm going to arrest you, or you're going to end up in handcuffs, things like that. And for me, I was a type of rebellious child that made me almost want to do it more. I didn't want to really listen to cops, especially at that age, 8th grade, freshman in high school. That age, you're very rebellious, and so it kind of made me do the opposite, I think, of what was the intention. And so I hope that the program that Jennifer has designed, that I'm helping kind of facilitate in the classroom, is leading to better results than DARE, I would hope. And so that's kind of why I'm here, and what I've been doing for the last year. Did you want me to?
Yeah, why don't you tell your story? I think people could have a little more perspective.
Okay,
On what you're
okay,
for.
I can do that. And I guess that's what I've been doing for the last year. In general, I'm a recovering heroin addict, and that's what led me to Jennifer in the first place. I had dealt, I guess the issues we're talking about today are anxiety and stress, and I dealt with very severe social anxiety when I was younger, as long as I can remember. There's not really a time in my life that I didn't have social anxiety. And so when I got to high school, I found ways of escape. We kind of talked about the escape and performance enhancing. I took the escape route, and I didn't want to be me, and I didn't want to be in my own skin, and I was kind of disgusted by myself. And so I tried different drugs, whether it be alcohol, marijuana to start. That led me to OxyContin when I was in high school, and one thing led to another, and OxyContin became expensive, and I couldn't sustain that habit, and that led to heroin. And so I was a pretty hard heroin addict, I'd say, for some time. And I've been to various rehabs, and I've spent a lot of time trying to get sober. I've spent a long time trying to get sober. And this last time, I've been doing well, but you never really know. It's always very fragile. It's a very fragile thing. So one day I could just go out, and that's kind of all the time I put in is gone. And so how I met Jennifer and why I'm passionate about this is because I would hope that I can help other children kind of avoid that entire process of the struggle, the pain, the family. My family has been through a lot. What I went through, all that kind of trauma and pain, I would hope that I can help other children and other students avoid that, because it's been a long process and it hasn't been fun, and I have learned a lot from it. But at the same time, I would, if I could go back, probably say I wish I didn't steal from my family, and I wish I didn't hurt them in that way and push away my friends, and I wish I had a relationship with my brother, all these things. So that's kind of why I do this, and why I really believe in Jennifer's program, and do hope it's effective.
You might mention your parents, the piece your parents played, that you did go to them to try to get help and so forth. I think that's interesting.
Yeah. I don't like to. I think I did go to my family at one point and say I need help, and before I really started and was an addict, I'd say. But they didn't really know how to deal with the situation, and they're great people. I don't want to bash them at all in any way. They're great parents, and they're great people, and they really care. It's not that they don't care, it's just that we didn't know how to deal with the situation at all. and I had this really severe social anxiety, and we thought maybe it was puberty mixed in with other things, just being shy and introverted. And so I had a lot of stuff going on, and we had no idea how to attack it. And so I think we ended up not doing anything because we didn't really know the correct route to take. I didn't, obviously, I was pretty young. They didn't, they had never dealt with something like that themselves, and my older brother didn't have that when he was my age. And so we just didn't know what to do. And so I think education is important in what to do and how to avoid the child or the student or whoever it is taking the situation into their own hands and taking kind of drastic measures to deal with their stress and anxiety, because that's what I did. I didn't know what else to do. I was just sick of dealing with being anxious and feeling uncomfortable, and I had had enough, and so I did things that worked, and they worked for a while. They worked for years. And it did work for a while, and I thought I had fixed it, but that's not something that I can sustain my entire life. I can't use heroin forever, obviously. And so I think there are better and healthier ways to cope with anxiety that hopefully come up during this panel that we can get into and talk about. So hopefully that comes up. But yeah, that's kind of what happened with me and why I'm here.
Thank you.
I don't want to go now. So I'm Scott McKenna. I'm the cop. I don't even have handcuffs on me, so you're right. I'm the juvenile detective / school resource officer. I'm currently responsible for, up until a week ago, 9 schools, which included the elementary schools in San Anselmo, Brookside, Wade Thomas, Drake High School. I've got Hall Middle School, Neil Cummins, The Cove, Redwood High School, and San Andreas, which includes Temescal. Recently, we've, and actually in the past 2 weeks, it's been great. We've been able to change the position where before we had a juvenile detective and a school resource officer, and the school resource officer did the schools, and the juvenile detective did crimes against children. What we've done now is we've made it a combination position where we're both basically 50-50. So my partner, Jason Height, is now responsible for the elementary schools, which is, I think, going to be a huge benefit, not only to the staff of the schools, to the parents, to the kids, but also, to me, is difficult to deal with 9 schools. Just the sheer volume of students, even trying to visit all the schools in a week can be kind of overwhelming and daunting task at some points. So I'm sure Mr. Sable's happy to hear that I'll be at Hall way more frequently now that I have far less schools to attend. So, my job basically is to get into schools, develop relationships with students and the administrators, and find a way that we can bridge the gap between, specifically for us, for law enforcement and our youth, where we have young people like Mike, who, by the way, wow. The fact that you're as good looking as you are and you can speak in public like you do kind of bugs me, but we'll talk about it. To have young people be able to sit up on a panel like this and talk about openly about things, addictions and things that they're not only painful, but socially are things that we look at as, oh, that's taboo, you're not supposed to talk about that. And the fact that they're up here doing that makes me proud to be a part of not only this community, but be a part of this panel. I just met these young people, Cameron and Mike, tonight, but to be able to sit up here and tell you those kind of painful things is not only impressive, but it's necessary. It's something that we need to do. But traditionally, law enforcement's always been this, oh, the cops are coming, and next thing you know, it's like herding cats, right? The kids all scatter. We're trying to get them to understand that we're here to protect them, that we're here to help them make better decisions, and that we're not here to tell them, don't do that or you're going to get handcuffs on you. That's the reason the DARE program went away. That's not an effective way to deal with the problems that we're encountering right now. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to be very clear with you. We have some serious issues. I could sit here and rattle off statistics all day long, but the truth is that our communities are facing some really, really difficult times with the probable legalization of marijuana, which is a whole different night of conversation. It's just an asinine thought for me that people would even vote for something like that, but that's a political opinion, which I'm not supposed to share if that's hypothetical. I guess I'll just tell you this. I started off in high school as a peer counselor. I went to a volunteer youth camp as a student and fell in love with, it was an outdoor education camp, and fell in love with the school resource officer for Petaluma, where I grew up, and how he handled himself with the students. And it just made me want to work with kids. And so I started doing that. I started volunteering as a peer counselor in high school, and it just kind of went from there. I help run the youth camp in Petaluma now. I've been doing it for 26 years. I've done it every year. I met my wife there. I'm a volunteer basketball coach. I coached at Casa Grande for 12 years where I grew up, and now I'm an assistant basketball coach for the varsity basketball team at Redwood. This is my third year doing that. I love it. I love working with kids. I like developing relationships with them and seeing how we can start figuring out why they're doing things instead of what they're doing. Because like I said, if you look at the sheer numbers of it, one school resource officer for just the 3 high schools, it's impossible for me to search every student on a daily basis and find out what drugs they have on them and then put them in jail for having them on them. I think it's a far more effective potential for us to do what we're doing now, which is getting these community groups together, working together to effectively find how we can stop this problem from spreading any further than it has. And I think a lot of it has to do with teen stressors, whether it's enhancing their performance or whether or not they're trying to escape from something. But I think we should start figuring out why these kids are doing it, and stop focusing so much on what it is there. Because like I said, I could sit here and rattle off statistics about whether it's heroin or whether it's cocaine or whether it's marijuana or whether it's alcohol. But the fact is that they're using, and they're using all those things. Sometimes they're using them in combination. It's scary, and I'm here to try to figure out a way that as a community and as a big group that we can start chipping away at that problem. It's not an overnight solve. So that's why I'm here.
Thank you. And actually, Scott's going to have to get going sooner than most of us are. And so I would like to start with a question for you, Scott, and then perhaps we'll see if there are any questions anyone has for Scott before he has to get going, and then we'll continue. And of course, anyone on the panel can answer this as well. But Scott, I was actually, to your point, that there's a lot of stuff going on. And that and not to focus as much on what it is, but that it is happening. The one thing I did want to point about what it is this idea that it's like maybe for a long time the concern has been the potency of marijuana and the binge drinking, but now we're seeing more cocaine and heroin and harder drugs, and also that it's translating into these alcohol and drug related medical transports, like 5 or more in our community over the past year. And so I just thought maybe, you brought it up. I don't know how you feel about talking about it, but, maybe a little bit about why. Like, I mean, you do talk to these kids. You do. It seems like you have a lot of opportunities that you're with our teens. Do you have any thoughts on, your own opinion of what's going on and what we can be doing as parents? Well, first of all, let me just, I would like to put out there that it's an opinion. So, growing up in Petaluma and coaching there, like I said, for 12 years, then coming here for the last 3, the difference, the best way I can explain it to you is even the difference in coaching kids in Petaluma is a difference to coaching the kids here in Marin. It's really overwhelming to see the differences in kids, the way that they approach things, the stresses that they have on them. We live in a community it's an affluent community. Not to say that every single person here has money or that has success, but if you're looking at it majority-wise compared to a different area, it is. It's just it's a beautiful area. I mean, I walk out of my police station sometimes and look at the mountain behind me and go, really? This is where I work? But something as simple as driving through the parking lot at Redwood High School and seeing the cars that these students are driving. And I'm not, this is judgment free. I'm not
saying that they shouldn't be driving these cars, or they shouldn't, but I'm just saying that when you start developing expectations at a young age for what success is, and what kind of house you're living in, what kind of car you're driving, what kind of jobs your parents have, what school they went to, these are all stresses that are already added to the things that we went through when we were younger and in high school ourselves. It's a different animal now. Everything's instant with these kids. Whether it's microwaving their dinner instead of sitting at home around the dinner table, or whether or not they have access to pornography while they're sitting in class as a 7th grader. And I say that because I see that. I mean, these kids have smartphones that have instant access to websites that not only teach them how to find heroin, but even to make it. I mean, there's step-by-step directions right there on Google. It's incredible. We didn't have that in our generation. And you start thinking about those things, it's scary. I could go on and on about even seeing the way that the kids dress nowadays. Everything's sexually based, whether or not it's TV or in movies, or people that they're musicians. And so kids are in such a hurry to grow up that they're participating in things at ages where you're just like, no, not yet, for the love of God, right? But it's happening. And these are all things that are stressors to these kids that are just the normal ones. It's already hard enough to try to fit in, to be accepted, to get good grades. And if some kids are going undiagnosed with learning disabilities that maybe are helping them or not helping them succeed in school, that we don't even realize yet, and so they feel isolated, or they're not being successful, and that just snowballs. And then you start getting into the drugs and alcohol for escape, or whether it's maybe to enhance their performance. Maybe they want to be more successful and they're trying to get an edge. It's a scary world, and like I said, I think that in this area in general, I think is more susceptible to these stressors based on the fact that the accessibility of drugs is high. It's even if you look at how much prescription drugs are given out in Marin County, and it could be something as simple as going to the dentist, and we treat pain. Everybody treats pain now. And it's like, well, that's great. You're going to be in pain for 3 days, but they're going to give you a month's worth of oxycodone, right? And then next thing you know, that's sitting in a medicine cabinet at somebody's house, and sometimes it's unattended. We have dispense bins located around our community, at the fire station, at the city hall, at our police station. We encourage parents to please go through your medicine cabinets and dispose of all prescription drugs that are no longer necessary and that are expired. Having them around it's just a dangerous scenario. Keeping track of funding is a big one. Kids get access to bank accounts, but your parents are in control of that, right? That's your child until they're 18. And so kind of things that are red flags are when they're taking out the same amount of money every week on the same day. And you're like, wow, it cost you $40 for lunch every Tuesday for the last 6 months. I mean, what are they doing with that money? Where's it going? You know what I mean? Kids are trading. A lot of it's not even selling at the schools anymore. These kids trade prescription drugs with each other. It's like a barter system. Alcohol we've all been dealing with alcohol since even when we were in high school. But these kids seem to do it to excess now, to black out. Like I said, it's tough to sit here at a panel and try to get all this information out there in a small amount of time. But we could sit here all night and talk about all the different little things, right? But like I said, what's it all come down to? And I think a lot of it has to do with stress. I will say this: the wellness center is something that I'm behind 100%. I think that now that it's up and running, I think that hopefully in a year or two, we're going to see some serious decline in numbers because students are going to have access to people to talk to, fellow students, people that they feel comfortable around. and hopefully that's going to alleviate some of the problems that we're having. But we need more. We need more of it. We need open dialogue. We need participation. We need people to engage not only their kids. It's okay to ask them questions. It's okay to pull them aside and say, no, you know what? I don't like what you're doing. I don't like how much money you've been spending. I don't want you to have your phone at school. So here's a burner phone to dial 911. You don't need a smartphone with access to the internet as a fifth grader at school all day long. Like what, you know? And I'm not, like I said, there's no judgment here. I'm just putting out ideas, things that I see at schools where kids get, you know, not only access to this information, but it's just like, you know, they're getting text messages from kids in the middle of class, and it's disruptive to the class, it's disruptive to the teachers, which causes more stress. It's just like, it's a snowball effect.
Thank you. You know, I just want to make sure we get the chance in case anyone does. First of all, I really just appreciate, like, you have such insight into this in a different way than I think other people are seeing it. But I also want to make sure, because I'm being sensitive to the time for you, and also that
I coach basketball, we have a game tonight.
it's very important. But in order to not call anyone out, I want to first ask if anyone wants to pass a card to us. Does anyone have any questions that they've written? No? Okay. So then before Scott leaves, I just want to make sure I open up. Does anybody have a specific question that they have for Scott that they would like to ask before we move on and then open it kind of like to the panel overall? Yeah, that's great.
I think what you shared, Scott, is very important as a parent in the community, because we know what happens when our kids come home and on the weekends. You see what's happening when they're at school. And, you know, I guess what I am wondering is, because you do work with I'll just focus on the 3 different high schools right now, you know, how much of what you see and the realities of what you're experiencing, as well as your own input, you know, based on what you think could be positive solutions to it, i.e. leaving cell phones out of the classroom or cutting down, you know, making clear technology policy. I mean, how much interface do you get as the school resource officer as a really critical component of our school systems with the superintendents and our leadership to say these are very harsh realities that we all need to be on the same page about? Because I think it's that partnership that I am hoping is happening at the district levels, you know, because and then I think then the more we know as parents about the real transparency of what's happening, we can all truly work in partnership. But if we don't all know the big picture, I just feel like I'm just wondering how that works with you and the school district once you report back as to what's really going on.
Right. Great question, but I actually have to leave, so. It's a tough scenario for me specifically because I have to tap dance on the line of politics and what's the goal and mission of our department. How do I represent my police department and my chief? Fortunately for us, our chief of police grew up. His father was a police officer here. And he and I both grew up in this department, and so he's vested in this community and wants to see things succeed. So he's amazing and supportive of whatever we need. So I feel confident that he's not going to receive this video, and I'm not going to get in trouble for it if he does. The problem with the schools is this, when it comes to like superintendent, things like that, is that each school, everyone's got reputations, right? Nobody wants their reputation ruined. And when something goes in the newspaper saying that somebody was arrested on their campus for drug use, it makes them look bad. And nobody wants that. So on one hand, we're trying to make sure that everybody's safe and that our students go home and that they have the resources and things necessary to live a happy, healthy life. And on the other hand, we're worried about reputations as opposed to outcomes, right, and results. So to me, we kind of need to figure out how we can work with the school districts, with the school administrations individually, as well as the community, but mostly with the media. I mean, as a law enforcement officer, to me, the media is the devil. It just seems to me like so much information that gets put out there is irresponsible. It's not fact-based. It's such a quick rush to judgment to vilify or to scare. That's what sells newspapers. That's what sells me. Let's scare everybody, then they'll want to buy product or they'll want to watch the news. I mean, I can't even watch the news anymore. It's all negative. And we need them to, especially locally, we need them to know that just because you have an arrest of a student out of school for heroin possession doesn't make that student a bad kid, and it doesn't make the school a bad school. That's not how it works. And these kids are in pain. They're using for reasons, right? We have they're asking for help. They need help. And if they're not asking for help, they still need help. And I think that's what we should be here for, is for the kids. So we need to get past reputations and what everything looks like to us and start working on the problem, which is the kids, and that's what we're here for. So I don't know if that answers your question or part of it. The coalitions are great. We're all starting to work together, communities and Marin County. And I will say this: the other point I will say is, so you're asking me for solutions. The biggest one, in my opinion, just from what I can see, is we really need to work with Marin County in general, like ARC Safe Marin, and stop the excessive prescription dosage amounts that are out there. It's just the amount of prescription medication that's available in our community it's ridiculous. I think I saw something where it was like every man, woman, and child in Marin County last year would have had 3 pills apiece a day for the year. That's how much medication got doled out last year in Marin County. I mean, if you think about that, that's just what? That's to me that's overwhelming. And when you have that much accessibility, you're just causing bigger problems. I mean, the marijuana thing, the alcohol thing. I mean, no one's going to wave a magic wand and those things are going to go away. I wish I could say that with any level of confidence. I don't think it's going to. I think we can try to limit it, right? But really, these harder drugs that lead to heroin addictions, things like that, these are things that are causing suicides and overdoses, and we need to figure out how we can save some kids.
Yeah, that's a really great point. I think just as we talk about solutions, what I hear from you right there is that there is actually a direct path with the oxycodone going to harder drugs, and the oxycodone is often because of the feelings of anxiety. And so, like, if we want to just draw a direct line right now, it is something that's within our power, right, to be able to take care of any medications we have in our home, either dispose of them or at least lock them up. And, so that our kids aren't getting access to it, because we don't want to be the ones that are creating the gateway drug for them to go into other drugs. And also being really sensitive to that our kids are really vulnerable, that if they actually do take pain medications for a legitimate reason, we have to be really paying attention to what they're doing. So I just wanted to, I'm actually summarizing some of what you had said in that article.
It's okay also as a parent to, if your kid has, like, say, a surgery and the doctor says, well, here's 3 weeks worth of Vicodin, it's okay as a parent to say, well, how long is their pain going to last? Well, typically 3 to 5 days. Okay, well, then why do they need 15 days worth of Vicodin? And I say that through personal experience recently, because I had a ruptured appendix and was out for a couple of months, basically through the holidays. And the amount of medication that I received, because I was out of it, but when I woke up the next morning and got the little bottle that I got sent home with, it was like I basically had a month's worth of pain medications for appendicitis. And yeah, it hurt. But 3 days later, I would like to say I was doing jumping jacks, but that's obviously not what I was doing. But I mean, 3 days later, I was fully capable without the pain medications of moving on with my life. And it's just something that we need to be hyper aware of, is how much medications are not only being prescribed, but where they're at and how we can get rid of them. And the police station is right across the street here, ladies and gentlemen. We're happy to take all your prescription drugs. I'm happy, my email, if anybody wants to write it down, it's easy to remember, but it's smckenna@centralmarinpolice.org. I'm happy to give my email to a room of parents, and I don't care if every single one of you emails me tomorrow with questions, comments, or concerns. We're here to help you out with whatever resource we can provide, whether it's information or just having a conversation about how I can help you out. So
Thank you so
we're here for you, and Anybody else have any questions for me?
Thank you.
You're welcome. I apologize for having to leave.
No, no,
This is an important conversation and clearly a great panel, so I wish I would have got to see everybody else's discussion.
can watch
But I'll watch the video. So.
Exactly, thank you. Well, actually, one of the things that Scott brought up that I'd love to just touch on with the rest of the panel is this idea of really getting to the bottom of like what these kids are feeling. So what they're actually experiencing, so we can hear, not just what they're doing, but what's really going on with them. And I happen to have seen that Jessica has a list of some actual quotes, and so I thought that's a great starting place, and then anyone else who wants to add what they've heard. I'd like to come if it's good. I'd like for yours to be just exact quotes, and if you have quotes, but if not, I'd really like to come from the place of like, what are they saying they're actually feeling? Because I think that's like, for all of us to be able to understand that, and then be able to watch for these things in our kids and be able to really see, before it gets out of control. So
I've been working a lot at Drake recently, and there was a teacher who I have been working with who did activity with her students a year and a half ago about stress and asked them a bunch of questions, and she shared the document with me just the other day. It's 10 pages long, and I pulled some quotes from it that I was just kind of blown away by relating to stress. So here you go. These are direct quotes from students. My friends are stressed as hell. These are quote 2. There is less emphasis on my interests and overall well-being, more emphasis on achieving financial and academic success. All of these pressures have created a stress that has replaced happiness in my life. The next quote, not having the time to do things that I love. Next quote, lately it feels like there is no room for error because if I do something wrong, it will go straight into affecting my chances of getting into college. The next quote, on a scale of 1, lowest, and 10, highest, my stress level is constantly at an 8 or higher. The next quote, I have complete mental breakdowns when it all becomes too much. For me, it requires just one trigger, and the next thing I know, I'm on the floor, drowning in tears, gasping for breath, suffocating by the pressure to do my best, use my time wisely, not spend too much time on one little thing. This list could fill an entire page. And then the last one.
Can I just emphasize
Yeah.
something? What it is like, picture, we're the ones saying, because I see the quotes, like, do your best, right? Like, that's what we say, right? We're like, just do your best. And that's what they're hearing. And I see, what was one of the other ones? So use your time wisely. Like, those seem like really reasonable things to say to our kids, right? So I just wanted to emphasize that there were quotes.
Yeah, and then the last paragraph. I am extremely stressed all the time. I find that school has increasingly taken up so much of my time and energy that I have close to nothing left for doing things with my family, hanging out with friends, or just participating in activities that I have a genuine interest in. I haven't gotten a sufficient amount of sleep since middle school. I am constantly thinking about schoolwork or doing homework. It's reached the point that I no longer value actually learning the material, but only getting a good grade. Many of my teachers assign a lot of unnecessary busy work that doesn't enhance my learning, but merely wastes my time and gives me unnecessary stress. It seems impossible to get good grades, score well on SAT, ACT, participate in sports extracurriculars while still maintaining healthy relationships with my family and friends. I almost never have time to do things I want to do, like hiking and art. It seems as though there is not an end in sight. Even in the summer, I'm expected to get a job or take classes to get ahead. How am I not going to burn out before college? The stress isn't from my parents or specific people, but rather the entire environment I'm surrounded by and the school system in general.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that, I think one thing I really think all parents need to really hear very loud and clear is I believe the root cause of a lot of the stress that these kids are feeling, like we're hearing in this quote, is unrealistic parental expectations. And I say unrealistic because we're all different, and kids all have different temperaments, but this requires knowing your child. And you may think, the idea of going to college, well, if subtly, there's a lot of Stanford plaques in that library, and that kid thing, it means they have to go to Stanford. The stress on kids is just amazing. I see it in my practice. I was thinking of one girl that comes in and she complains about her mother, and all these wonderful mothers here tonight, but it's just so palpable for me. She'll say, if I know my mom's home, I say I'm going to the library. I just can't be in the same room with her. She just stresses me out. And this is a really well-intentioned, wonderful, very capable mom, but somehow these kids are getting the message, when they grow up and they're young, children basically want to please their parents. That's what they want to do. They want to please you. So they go through life and they understand they're in school. They try to get good grades and be good kids and please their parents. But as they get older and the pressures are mounting, and the message is to do your best, some kids, they're doing their best, and they just can't. You know, they're not going to get straight A's, and they're not supposed to go to Stanford or Harvard or Yale. They're just not supposed to. And that's fine. There's plenty of other schools that they can go to. So I think somehow we're giving these kids the message that there's only one way to do things and one way to be successful. And it requires ourselves saying, you know, what kind of kid do I have? What is this child made of? Some can be pushed more, a little more, and they will respond to that, but some really break under it. And if you think about, I don't know if we have copies of the Atlantic article tonight. You know, so this is literally killing our kids. If you look at the Stanford Palo Alto community, this is an article on the cluster suicides that are going down in Stanford. And it is absolutely tragic that these kids are just feeling such stress. They end up hating themselves so much because they can't deliver what their parents want or what schools want. I think part of the solution, you're hearing a lot of complaints about it, but I think part of the solution is, I read an article about what they're doing down in LA, which I thought was really inspiring. A couple of schools are limiting the number of APs that kids can take. They're saying, no, none of this like 5 AP, you're not allowed. Kids, you know, they'll take it to the nth degree. So if we can have school communities that will embrace this, because as parents, it's difficult. They're all in a school system that just is so demanding. But going to your PTA, working, you can do it in public schools, you can do it in private schools, really saying, this is too much. Our kids are under too much stress. Schools there are things that you can do as parents to really battle that, because I think this is what's really taking a lot of our kids down, and why they're turning to drugs, and how they're trying to deal with the stress. So I wanted to make sure we got that point across.
Yeah, I really appreciate that.
One quick thing about Palo Alto, 15 people from Palo Alto Unified just came and met with myself and my supervisor for 3 hours to learn about the wellness model, because they're really struggling. And the shocking piece that I walked away with is that our numbers here in Marin are significantly higher than their numbers in Palo Alto. So our numbers of suicidality, depression are higher here. So we need to be doing something in this community before we have a crisis.
I'd just like to say something about the phrase, do your best, because, I mean, has anyone here 100% of the time done their best? Like, that's not physically, that's not physically possible to do your best 100% of the time. Like, always doing your best is, like, it's like saying, like, because, like, you know what you can achieve, but you also know your limits, and sometimes they contradict each other. And for your kids' mental health, they have to know themselves and know their limits, and you have to respect that. That's really important, is that if your kid needs a break, give them a break. Let them veg for a bit. Now, I'm not saying they should just lay on the couch all day, but if they need to get home and just watch a show for like a half hour, that's healthy, and that's giving their brain a time to recharge. And I'd argue that is spending their time wisely, because now they can do better, I'd say. It's kind of a contradiction.
Yeah, but you know, when you think about it, it's such a good point, because if they're feeling under pressure at school, and then they're at home and they're feeling under pressure again, they got to do their homework, and the mother's saying, come on, how did you do on that test? You know, I mean, they don't have a place to just relax. They never have downtime, and no human being can maintain that. You know, so that's why so many of them really falling apart. I think that's a really good point.
Yeah. How about you, Dina? What are you seeing?
I come in contact with young people, you know, when it's no longer fun. It's, you know, it's problems. And what we're seeing in treatment is we're seeing a lot of kids coming in addicted and abusing Xanax. I've done about 4 admissions in the last 2 weeks with some Xanax overdoses. And we get the call from the parent that when the kid is in the hospital because they've overdosed, and they want to bring him in. And generally, we've been talking to this parent for months, and they were just waiting for something really bad to happen, and it happened. And you know, I'm really glad Mike is here, because he's actually, unfortunately, the poster person for addiction, what addiction looks like these days. One of my jobs is I travel all over the United States, and I visit treatment programs all the way from like social services to what's considered luxury treatment and everything in between. And over, you know, about 10 years ago, you'd visit, there'd be about the average age 30, 40, 50 and over. Every once in a while you'll see a 20-something. Now it is full of 20-year-old opiate addicts. That is what, and it's here in Marin too. And adolescent treatment and adult treatment are very, very different. And I don't know if Mike went through adolescent treatment at all, but it's, you know, you could go to school. There's so many other factors that you get in adolescent treatment and why early intervention is really important. You know, I just want to add that 'cause I'm a person in long-term recovery, and one of my passions that, you know, why I do this is because I always wonder if I would have had certain information, would I have made different choices? If I knew what, so when we do our educational presentations, it's just all about information. And, you know, like the Cameron and Mike were saying, you know, if you have the information, you know, you generally make, you know, some decent choices. And if you don't, you know what's going to happen. And like I said, we're just seeing a lot of Xanax and the high-potency marijuana in Marin. We treat kids from every single high school I've seen, Palo Alto, Orange County, Beverly Hills, Connecticut. You know, these are considered, you know, wealthy areas, and we're seeing a lot of the same thing.
That's great. One of the things that I wanted to just, I don't know, I'm feeling a really strong impulse to ask this question is, so I don't really know many people who don't have stress, and I don't know many people who don't have some times of anxiety, and I realize that there is a varying degree, but let's just go to the place of not even like clinically diagnosed anxiety, just for simplicity's sake. We're just talking about like people who are feeling anxious, that, you know, that they have moments of that where it's overwhelming. So I guess I'd love to know what you guys think is, you know, both maybe the antidote for it, sort of like how do we even prevent that from happening? I'm not just talking about the high school. I see this happening younger and younger. I see kids who are struggling with anxiety, and it doesn't even seem to be related to, I don't know, it doesn't even seem to be related to school. It seems to be related to other things. So first, like, are there things that we as parents can be doing kind of proactively in our homes to sort of set up the circumstances where the kids don't suffer as much from anxiety? But then there's another part of it for me, which is this curiosity around, like, how about helping our kids to manage it? Is that part of it? Like, do we need to be doing more around, like, the wellness center, but, you know, do we need to be more educated on how to help our kids to have the tools to be able to deal with the stress that they're feeling? I mean, we can't always change the surroundings, but we can sometimes change our reaction to it. So I'm just sort of curious where you guys are on that, and like whether you've seen anything successful. I'm seeing you nodding your head like you're like, yeah, I've got something to say.
Let's see, you know, first of all, there's just these good parents tonight. There's no shortcuts to parenting. There are just no shortcuts. So the first piece is knowing your child very well. The second piece is knowing yourself very well. I mean, what kind of parenting did you have? Do you have an internal message when things go badly? You fall into a little tizzy and run around and call the tutors if your child's having a problem? Or do you have that voice inside of you that can say, you know, you're such a resourceful guy. You're going to figure this out. Let me know what you're thinking, and I'm here if you want to talk it through. But really modeling how to deal with anxiety is so key for our kids. And they're going to hit all kinds of things growing up, all kinds of problems. We don't know what, but they're there. You know, we know that, and it makes us nervous. But it was one of my most difficult parts of being a parent for me, because I tend to run anxious, and so something would happen, and my first one got a big dose of it. I would just be running around and nervous. And I really learned with my second one, you know, what's the most important thing is to be able to model for them that it's all going to work out, and you have confidence in them. You're giving them the message, it's going to work out, you can do this, versus the sky's falling in and let's all climb under the table and hide, you know, because they're going to need that calming voice. And what that really requires is you looking at your own parenting and saying, do I have that voice for me? Did my parents do that for me? And if they didn't do it for you, then you got to find it. Then I would suggest, you know, really working on yourself too, because I think that's a big part of parenting. When you're parenting your children, you have to go through every step of it. You have to remember what it was like in elementary school. You want to do middle school again. If you hated middle, it's rough. Then you're over-projecting some of your stuff, you know. So a real good piece of it is knowing yourself and making sure that you have that calm voice inside of you to help your kids. I think that's one key.
That's great.
And I've seen kids that come through anxiety in interesting ways. I had one girl I worked with, you know, she had some really difficult family stuff going on, and she managed to find a great mentor when she was in school. There's a lot of things that kids can do, that they're very resourceful. So this was a fabulous teacher that she just adored, that made her sort of launched her into this whole area of study she's doing. And, you know, she really needed someone she could talk to. But if your kid's going through difficult times, having someone else they can talk to, recognizing, okay, they don't really want to talk to me, that's okay, kids go through that. You can get professionals involved, or maybe if they have some kind of mentor. I've heard this from people that have gone through difficult family situations. Having someone they can talk to is so important. And an activity that they choose, that they love, that's always great. Not that you choose. They did ballet, and that was so cute, but it's time for them to figure out what they want to do. Because we do have a little bit of an epidemic now of kids in college that are having a hard time figuring out what they want to do. Because they've been on this plan. This is the plan. You just get A++++, and you just go to the top school, and then what? Well, then you just keep doing this? No. Then you actually have to figure out what you want to do with your life. Then it really gets like someone's, you know, and kids are, it's called the false self, where they spent so much time doing, you know, performing, that they've never really had that ability to ask themselves, what do I want to do? Can I lead my own life? And so the more we can give kids the message, it gets back to, you can handle this. How are you going to do this? You know, I've seen you work through this so many times. You're going to be fine.
Yeah, I like that. So some level of like putting back and helping them find their own solutions. You know, it brings me, I was just curious about, like, with Mike and Cameron, if you've come up with ways that you handle, you know, that you've found ways to handle your, either, you know, whether social anxiety is still something that's up for you, or just general anxiety and stress. Like, you guys, I think you mentioned that you have a regimen. I'm not sure if that you meant like literally, or you just something that works for you. But if you're willing to share, you know, what you do to manage your stress, you're pretty stressed out right now, right? I mean, you've got a lot of demands.
Yeah, I'm in the midst of college and all that stuff, and that's really stressful. But I've been seeing a therapist for probably almost my whole life, and I think therapy is so important, even for kids, because it's someone you can talk to, and that's like you're literally paying them to be a good listener. That's their job. And so, like, I always come out of therapy feeling 10 times better, mostly because I love my therapist, and she's just fantastic. But that's really helpful. Another thing that's really helpful is, like, finding, like, a little, like, downtime thing you like doing. Like, I'll just do, like, a little, like, I like coloring books. That's a thing now. They're for adults, guys. I will do a little bit of yoga in my room, just if I'm in the midst of homework, just to get my blood flowing. Not anything too, like, rigorous. I don't, like, go out and, like, run 10 miles. But it's just like those little things that I enjoyed doing, and like popping those in like little places, like that really works for me.
Great.
Yeah, I would just second everything Cameron said. I think therapy is, saying it saved my life is probably drastic, but it's close, you know, and having someone that I can talk to about things that are going on has been really helpful for me. Also, Cameron was talking about investing your time in something you enjoy. I enjoy playing guitar, and when I was active in my addiction, I actually pawned my guitars for drug money. And so, you know, since I've been sober, I've come back and I've decided to kind of invest that effort that I may have spent looking for drugs or taking drugs into something that I actually enjoy doing and is healthy for me, in a form of self-expression. And so, instead of looking for something to escape, I'm looking for something to express myself and feel good about what I've done and what I've created and how I spent my time, and looking back and saying that was nice, instead of looking back and saying that was a waste of time. So I think therapy is good, investing your time in something you enjoy. And also I'm a big advocate. I think exercise of any sort, you kind of talk about yoga, is really helpful. It helps me sleep. I have really bad insomnia, and I always have, and I think it's just something I'm going to live with for my whole life, and it helps with my sleep, being able to fall asleep and stay asleep. I think it's there's not just one thing that for me has worked and helped with my social anxiety. It's a combination of a handful of things that I've found through trial and error for myself, and everyone is so different and unique that I don't think the things that work for me are going to work for someone else necessarily, but it's just trial and error and time. So Cameron might like coloring books, whereas I might like the guitar and she likes yoga, and I might like a different form of exercise. You know, I think that is just trial and error and looking for those things and spending time looking for those things instead of investing your time in escaping. It's spending your time in something that has substance and something that kind of creates and makes it an interesting individual, and so that you're proud of yourself and you tell people, I like to do yoga or something like that, instead of saying, oh, I just sit at home and I don't do anything, because that doesn't feel good to tell people and say and think in your own head. And I think at the end of the day, if you're laying in bed and you're proud of yourself and you're happy with how you spent your day and happy with how you've been spending your week or your month, you're not going to feel the need to go out and get drugs and escape. And I think that's kind of what it comes down to if you're exercising.
One thing, I'm sorry, I
That's
didn't,
okay.
but one thing I
Yeah.
just wanted to say about both these guys, the way parents screw this up is that we all of a sudden say, oh my gosh, you like the guitar? Well, how about starting your own band? And I have the space for it, you know. We have to take everything to the nth freaking power. Like, let the kid just strum the guitar and have a good time with the guitar. I mean, I think then it becomes stressful. Instead of just, I kind of want to just chill in my room and figure out how to do a chord, you know? It just,
I'm
that's the worst.
That's, oh my god. I'm
You
in
know?
this, like, I like to draw sometimes, and my dad would constantly be on my back. He's like, I'm gonna find like an artist, and then you're gonna talk to them, and you're gonna get your artwork framed in museums. I'm like, I'm not even that good, honestly. Like, it's, and like that almost like discourages me from doing it. I'm like, I don't even want to show anyone it. I just want to do it like for my own like sanity, honestly.
Yeah, it's that concept of having to have a passion, you know, and that can be stressful. What's your passion? Like, it's
Yeah.
just, you know, we have this way of.
That's really such a great point.
I think one other thing parents can do is help normalize mental health and destigmatize. So I'm so glad to hear you guys are having positive experiences with therapists. A lot of young people feel like it's embarrassing and they shouldn't talk. Like, I've been doing presentations about mental health, and I ask them to raise their hands if when I say the word mental health they think of something negative, and at least 75% of the kids raise their hand. When I say physical health, do you think of something negative? Nobody raises their hand. So mental health has stigma. And it's up to us to say it's okay. We all have feelings. Our feelings change throughout the day. Let's talk about those feelings. If you can't cope with those feelings, you can talk to me, you can talk to a friend, you can talk to a professional. Destigmatizing and letting it always be an option. That's what the wellness centers are hopefully going to do, letting the students know there's always an open door to talk and that there's no reason not to. And there's resources for people who have money and people who don't have money in Marin to get mental health support.
Yeah, that is really such a great thing to point out.
Yeah. It's a lot about the language that parents use.
Yeah.
A quick
I would
question,
love
if
to. I was
it's
just going to
okay.
say, I want to open it up to
Because this
our,
question is just coming to me, you know, okay, devices, phones, you know, looking at things on the internet, fine. That I know that for some kids, a lot of kids say that's my downtime. That's where I get to relax a little, text a little. I also see, and I mean, I see this a lot. You're doing your homework. Oh, I think I'll just look over here at shoes. I'll just look over here at something, and that's going to be, oh, that's going to relieve my stress. And then you're going back and forth. That has got to be so stressful. It would be for me. And then I think, to me, it seems like that's a huge factor as to why kids are so stressed right now. So, you know, we were just talking about sort of parents sort of getting the reins around this. You know, what can we as parents do to step in that way in a very unpopular way? It's going to be very unpopular.
yeah, does anybody have
Yeah.
anything that they want to add to that?
Any comments about the multitasking piece?
Oh, multitasking
Yeah.
piece.
That's
Like,
kind of what you mean.
so yeah, like it's very hard with the time I have left in my day after all my extracurriculars to have time to both maintain relationships, my mental health, and do homework. Sometimes I'll have like an hour left before 11 because I cannot not sleep at all. And it's really hard to discipline yourself because you're like, oh, I need to get so much stuff done, and there's a bunch of stuff I want to do, and oh, my friend is texting me, and that it is a really hard distraction. Most of the time, if I really want to get in my homework, I'll literally throw my phone across the room. It has a case, it's protected, we're all fine. Because like I just need it out of my sight. It's on silent, it's gone, I can't see it. And I close all the extra tabs I have, and I need to, you know, put myself. My mother actually, when I was in middle school, would make me put my phone upstairs outside my door while I was doing homework, and it was the worst. But it was so helpful in getting me in the habit of doing it myself. Because, you know, I wouldn't want her to take my phone, so be like, oh, I'll do it. I promise I'll put it away. And then, like, I actually did. And so that was actually really helpful. I think if you can trust your kids to let them or help them to manage it themselves instead of, like, try that first. And then if they can't handle it, that's when you have to be like, okay, give me the phone.
Yeah, that's really great advice to try to help them to learn how to do it first. Right.
It helps, of course, if you've been doing this from a younger age, so your kids know that this is kind of a rule to step. It's like anything, you know, stepping in when they're freshmen in high school and suddenly going, we need to pay attention to how you're doing your homework. It's just not going to work.
It's a little harder.
Yeah, once you're in high school,
Yeah,
like you
gotta
can't
start
like,
early.
yeah.
But you can't, I always like to say, like, it's never too late to try, anything, but, you know, it just might be harder. Yeah.
That's a good point.
Yeah, but you know, speaking of that, there's a movie coming out, a documentary called Screenagers, and I just am letting people know that I've heard that when the kids go, they're pretty shocked. They're pretty shocked. It has a huge impact on them. So just for what it's worth.
There's this app you can download that freaked me out so much I deleted it, that you can download on your kid's phone that tells you how much time you spend on your phone a day, and it is shocking and so upsetting because like you're like, oh, like you're like trying not to use it as much because you're like, I gotta get a good score, but like
What's it called? Yeah,
I forget what, I haven't had it in a while because it terrified me. Well, it's like screen time or something. It's something like that, but it was just. It's download that, make your kids download that, because that'll whip them into
Well,
shape.
my daughter's in 6th grade and she does not have an iPhone, and we will not get her an iPhone for I don't know when. But she keeps telling me, all my friends have it. And I said, great,
Yeah.
well, why don't you ask this friend who I know doesn't, and that one who doesn't. But she has a flip phone because she bikes to school, and I
Yeah.
want, if something happens, I want her to be able to get in touch with somebody. But the rule in our house is all screens in the kitchen at night before you go to bed.
Yeah.
Flip phones, it could be a
And for
tablet,
sleep.
whatever.
Very important for sleep.
Yeah,
It's really
it
good.
is. My mother
And they all
also
go
did
up an
that.
hour before bed.
Yeah.
I mean, my kid's young, so I know.
Yeah,
That's great.
rough.
Do you do the
That that's a good age to start.
You do the same. Oh.
I'm trying, but it's about.
You know, this is a whole nother item, but I've had kids like a program called Headspace. Have any of you heard of this?
Yes.
For meditation?
I do.
It's actually very cool. There's this guy with this great British accent, or maybe he's Australian, I don't know what he is. But he comes on and he leads you through like 5 minutes of meditation the first day and then 10 minutes, and then you can just sit in your computer and do it. And it's really cool. And you know, mindfulness has been proven to really help with focus and all kinds of things, and stress and anxiety.
Yeah, definitely. I would love to, yes, I was just gonna say,
I just saw Mike nodding when Jennifer was talking about the Headspace stuff, so have you used it or no?
Yeah,
You
I
like it?
use it, and I have a few meditation apps. There's one that's called Relax and Rest, which is really simple, things like that. I found it helps. I have a really hard time sleeping, so if I can't sleep, I often just try and get some rest through meditation or what it may be at night. So.
I use Headspace, and you could do it for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever you want.
That's
So
cool.
it's really, you pick it.
definitely check it out. It has a little regimen it brings you through. Somebody just had their hand up, yeah.
Mike, if you wouldn't mind sharing, how old were you when you used your first substance to just feel different?
Oxycontin, I was a sophomore in high school. But substances in general, a little, 2 years before that, probably a year or two. But I wouldn't say that anything before that really clicked, and I wasn't quite looking. I don't know. It's a hard question, but I'd say Oxcott sophomore in high school, beginning sophomore year.
Can I ask one more question?
Sure.
You talked about your parents, and when you first came to them and said, I just need some help. In looking back, you know, where you are now, which is completely different, but what would you have hoped they could have done differently?
Well, I was in 8th grade, and they actually took me to a doctor. And I went to a doctor, and I told them I feel wrong. I feel like something's off inside my body, and I don't feel right. And they listened, and they took me to a doctor. But the doctor just told me to eat eggs in the morning. That's literally what he told me. Yeah, I'm serious. I still remember seeing him and going into the office, and he didn't run any tests, and that's kind of what happened. I felt very betrayed by professionals as kind of a group, and by my parents because they didn't do anything. And so I after that, I just decided to take things into my own hand. So, you know, or take the situation and deal with it on my own. And so he looked at me and he said, "You look healthy," and I didn't look like I was dying, you know. And the things I was telling him made it sound like I was dying, because I did. I felt, you know, I wouldn't say I was suicidal, but I didn't want to wake up in the morning. And so I did tell him those things, and he just told me, you know, you need to eat more protein, eat an egg in the morning. And I did that, and it didn't work. So, yeah.
You're shaking your head, but it can make a big difference starting the day with protein as opposed to a pastry. It can make you feel
Yeah.
a lot
Well, yeah.
better.
It could,
But I mean, when you have severe depression, it's not about it.
yeah, like health is important, but also mental health is.
I would say just listen to the person that's telling you what's going on, because they're not going to lie. It's hard to do that in the first place. It's hard to go to someone and say, I'm broken and I need to be fixed. That's very hard to do, and that was really hard for me to do in the first place, to go to them and say, I need help, because that's, you know, that's saying something's wrong with you to start with. And so if someone comes to you and says that, I would listen, and I would take them to see more than one person, or 5 or 10, you know, until something is solved or you're working on solving it, because no one's going to come to you and say, I'm broken, if something's not. It takes a lot of courage, I think, and strength to actually go to someone and say that. So just for someone to do that in the first place means, I think, something's wrong and you should listen.
That's really great advice.
It can take a lot of different tries with different therapists and different providers. So after that, it would have been nice to try 5 more. But even excellent therapists, sometimes somebody doesn't connect to them. So keep trying.
Yeah. Yes.
First of all, congratulations, Mike. I mean, over the decades I've been around, I've certainly seen a lot of burnouts and people that have not made it through things, and they kind of just pass along in society and culture. And you know, one of the things is that I travel a great deal around the world. Every month I'm someplace in another part. Last week in Amsterdam, 2 weeks before in Paris. But the fact of it is that you know, interestingly enough, wherever I go, I actually have the American accent, which is a really great accent, you know, compared to the Aussie or the Brit. And there's one thing that's consistent. Last week in Amsterdam, was working because of filming it, is with migrants, and the migrants that are coming up through Europe. And if there's one thing that I've really noticed about Marin, which I love, and I've been here for 30 plus years, is that we have a very high level of expectation. You know, there's expecting the way we live and want, whereas other parts of the world really don't have that. They appreciate what they have, and they appreciate things that are pretty normal to us. And, you know, I was shocked a few years ago when I learned that we had such a high level of homeless kids, teenagers in Marin, that are, you know, either couch surfing or camping out by the place over by Nordstrom's, you know, whatever it might be. And there's a lot of things that we hide away. But I want to come back. There's many things I could probably address in the course of this discussion that I'd love to be able to. But it comes back to therapists, and I appreciate that. But in the other parts of the world, that really isn't kind of a prevalent thing. It's really family, and it really comes down to what, like in Israel, is called the Jewish uncle. You know, like the uncle that, you know, has the boy that talks with the boy, and they walk away. And the families are large families, so there's always somebody that's there to talk with them. And the familial activity is really key. And you mentioned about the mom, and I'm probably guilty as a dad. But the fact of it is that we really reach out to our family. Like my grandfather and my wife's sister, my son's aunt, they talk every Sunday night at 6 o'clock. And they talk privately and they talk through things. And you know, there's a history that's built with that, and a reliance and a trust. And if there's anything that I pass along through kind of a broad level of exposure, is the key about keeping the family together and keeping someone. You know, there's that crazy Uncle Charlie, and there's all kinds of things that are out there, but uniquely enough, they kind of bond with you. And I had one, and I just kind of passed along. I mean, there's many things, I'll throw it out too. I learned just day before yesterday, I don't know if you know this, but it was a shock to me, that getting back to what Scott was saying about prescriptions, and that is every script that a doctor writes, and I'm not a doctor, so I don't know if there's doctors in here, but as far as for OxyContin and for other, they get paid by the drug companies for that script, not for the actual filling, but for the script. That's a revenue generator in the business in and of itself, is, you know, writing the script. So consequently, to me, that's shocking that, you know, we have that 10-minute FaceTime and then we walk away with the script.
Yeah, you know, I want to make sure, do you ever, if you have a question, I'd love for you to ask a question.
My question really comes back down to is, you know, athletics is something that's kept me kind of balanced, I suppose, as best I can. Everybody, I mean, is that a stress reliever for you?
Yeah.
I mean, because I think that's part of it, sports, commitment, team, and that. Were you in athletics yourself? Were you playing sports?
Yeah, I dance. I do that lots of times a week. Exercise does release endorphins, so it's like a natural, wonderful stress reliever. But it's important that you find some, like, a method of exercise that you like. Like, I don't like sports. I'm not good at sports. Sports are not my thing. But once I found, like, dance, I'm like, okay, this is something I love to do, but also, like, it's good for me. Like, that was really important. And I tried all the sports, and I think what's really important is to not force your kid to do a sport just because, I don't know, it looks good, or like
like the Marin way that we like do a sport and then we have to make it competitive instead of like, can you do like
ride
a skateboard?
A sport a semester.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. So does anybody else? Yes.
Yeah, I like to set the record straight that doctors don't get paid
Yeah,
per
I
script.
do. That's why I
It's
needed
just
to-
right. Yeah, they don't get paid
Yeah.
per script. Scripts are tracked by drug companies as to what doctors are prescribing, but they don't get paid per script. Additionally, though, I have something else to say. I mean, to say that the expectations that school places on kids is what drives anxiety and all this sort of mental health problem, I think is oversimplifying the idea. All of us as adults here in this room have had expectations placed on us by our parents. And look at us now. We seem to function fantastically. Okay. I'm saying it's the proliferation of social media, you know, Netflix, you know, the Breaking Bad, all the information that's available. If it's available, kids are more likely to go out and try what they're seeing, try what they're hearing as well. So I think it's a bit more complex than just the expectations that parents have on kids.
Yes, I think that's really valuable. In fact, I'd love for our panel to go into how they see it more complex. Like what are the complexities that you see, and like add another dimension to it for us. Certainly, I love the idea of bringing the social media into it. But I do think whenever we go into the social media, it is so easy to go down that rabbit hole. And so I'm trying to be really careful to not let us go too much down that. But I would love to have each of you, wherever you feel like you can, address that. Yes, it is more complicated. And, you know, what's your nuance to that?
Well, I think it's so complicated. There's so many issues. That's how I started off today, is there's just a never-ending list of things that can cause stress. Some stress is good, so we also want to think about that. oh, there's so many things. So
maybe
social,
pick
I think
something that feels
empathy,
really-
we should not only be upset about social media, because it is upsetting, right? But we need to have empathy. Like, I didn't have social media when I was in high school. I cannot imagine seeing my friends at parties and not being invited and having people rank order their friends, break up with them over text. So I think we should have empathy for our kids around that kind of stuff. I also, someone said this once, and I think about it all the time. Teenagers are being evaluated and assessed 7 times. See now.
Yeah, I thought these were I thought they were last time.
I thought it was
That
time to quit,
reflection
and
on
that was
you.
a sudden way to say,
I'm sorry.
panel's over.
Teenagers are being assessed and evaluated up to 7 times a day by their teachers with all different personalities. That in itself is incredibly stressful. Like, to try to manage your parent expectations, your friends' expectations, and then 7 different teachers and all of their different roles. And imagine all of us being like our supervisors or our bosses, having 7 different bosses evaluating you 7 times a day. It's stressful. So our students have so much going on. And so I just think being just empathizing with them and letting them know that you understand and that you're here for them. And I think what you said about high expectations is key, but there's like studies shown that the most important thing is high expectations and high support. So if you have low expectations and high support, that's permissive. You need to keep both high expectations and high support to have our students and young people thrive.
That's a great way to put it.
I don't know if I have too much to add for that. I did want to just mention, as far as managing the stress with our teens, is that we really need to practice what we preach. If we're telling young people that you shouldn't drink or do drugs to manage your stress, are you managing? I'm just being very general. Do you come home and have a glass of wine, or have you been taking Ambien for a year to sleep to manage your stress? I mean, that's what young people are seeing. And even when we say, you don't need to do drugs or alcohol to have a good time, is that what they're seeing, always around parties and stuff? I think adults modeling really good behavior is really important, and that's really supportive. And it's really hard because those of us that are in recovery, it takes a lot of effort to learn how to manage stress. And to change not having a glass of wine after work, it will take a lot of effort. And I think it's worth it in the end to show young people that you don't need drugs or alcohol to relax.
Yeah, Dina, I just want to ask you, as far as just putting the emphasis on that it's a more complex issue than just the expectations, I think, do you have anything to add to that? I mean, you certainly see see kids from all areas.
Yes.
So maybe you can add a little dimension to, because I certainly don't want it to seem like that's what we're saying. And I will tell you, that I've heard pretty loud and clear, yeah, it's expectations, but there's also like a lack of ability to manage, like we're not really focused maybe on how to manage our stress. But I like the idea of getting to, like what do you see? What do you see that's, beyond just the expectations?
As far as using drugs and alcohol?
Like or maybe like, yes, the anxiety and then leading to that.
There's a lot of variables in, addiction, and if there's a family history with mental illness or substance use, be very, mindful of that and tell, your family members that is in the family, and that's an indicator. There's a lot of reasons, it's a completely different generation. I was at this training like 6 months ago, and there was a lot of 20-somethings, and I'm listening to them talk, and I realized that they hope to accomplish by the time they're 25 what I hope to accomplish by the time I'm dead. and listening to them, and it wasn't arrogant at all. They really, and what they've done, I believe that they could accomplish these things. And I realized it's just a whole nother generation, and I don't know what it would be like to be young right now, and I don't know if I can handle it myself.
Thank you. That's really good.
Yeah, I guess I would just add a little bit on styles of parenting and what can help kids versus set them back. And I mean, I feel very strongly that parents and schools are putting a lot of pressure on kids. It's a whole different generation. You didn't take 5 APs when you were in high school, did you? I mean, it's real, and getting into college now is ridiculous. It's a whole different ballgame. So I think that's huge, playing into this. But I also think we talked a little bit about modeling for parents, and if you have an environment where your kids feel they can come and talk to you without judgment, it's hard. I know some parents that do this really, really well, and I just so admire them. I've had kids tell me, yeah, I have a mom, and like, it just feels really good. I can just talk to her about stuff. I mean, people do pull this off, and we do think, oh, my kids won't. You have this image like in high school, they're never going to talk to me. Kids do, especially if you've cultivated this when they're younger, that they can come to you. They're not going to get a big lecture. You're not going to, if they've done something wrong, you're just going to sit there and listen and then kind of say, okay, well, what do you think you're going to do about this? Or, wow, how did that feel? We have a hard time saying, how did that feel? It's like, what are you going to do? We immediately go to the do thing. So it's more about getting them comfortable with their feelings and you modeling your own stresses. They look at us with these big, powerful adults charging around with all this stuff. It's like, model that, wow, this was really hard for me. I mean, if you want them to open up to you, you have to kind of be vulnerable yourself and say what's hard for you. So I think that's an interesting piece for parents. And then also, there's so much research now done on parenting styles. If it's my way or the highway, just because I say, no, you're not doing that, we have kids that oftentimes act out because kids are starting to be critical thinkers as they get older. They're separating and they want to, be able to talk about what they're thinking. And if you just slice them off at the knees and go, I don't care, this is just the way it is, they're angry. I mean, people want to get their opinions out. So that causes a lot of acting out. And then if you have the other extreme of the parents that are like, well, have a great time at the party and be sure you lock up when you come in. I'll be asleep. I'm so tired. And, just be sure you lock up the pets. Good night kind of thing. The child has this image like, this person doesn't even care that I'm going to be, they know what they're walking into, some crazy party situation. My mom isn't even going to wait up for me. She doesn't even care to tell me when to be home. That produces a lot of kids that feel unworthy. If my own mom doesn't care about me, like, who is? And why should I care about myself? So you have the same behavior of kids acting out because they really don't value themselves. And this idea of setting limits, which is hugely important when they're younger, because when they're 16, they'll just grab the car keys and say, I'm leaving, and they're much bigger than you, and so you can't do much. But if you, from the beginning, they know that your word is solid, and when you say no, you mean no, is huge in Marin, huge, and really hard to do, because they're used to instant gratification, as we've mentioned. I think Scott talked about that a little bit. So I think this idea of saying no, letting them, they can say whatever they want. They're mad, of course they're mad. I'm so sorry, this is so hard for you, but this is the deal. I think that's really important to try to establish as a parent, and that can really help your kids. That's all I would add.
I have one question of the two, of Cameron and Mike. I think it's real important, you just touched on with caring about somebody else, caring about something else. Do you have pets? I've got a reason for this, so do you have pets?
Yeah, I have a dog.
Fantastic.
Dog.
Dog? Yeah, it was really interesting, something just a few weeks ago in London, that someone came up, doctors like this came up and basically said that that adoption rates at the local SPCA's have dropped considerably because within the teenagers, due to the fact that they're now considering their phones as their companion versus the actual pet. And this is a flag that's gone up, and they're being overran with pets, and they're having no place to go. So I think it's an important aspect of when it comes to social media or device addiction, whatever it might be, that the devices are now starting to replace what we take for common.
Well, actually, I know that there's been some research, and I'd actually love to bring that out. It's a little edgy, but it is this idea that the source of addiction is actually rooted in lack of connection. So a lack of authentic connection. And, whether that's like to yourself, to your family, whatever, to a higher power. And so, I don't know. I mean, is it kind of based, that was, I believe that was a study that was done. And it was sort of a surprising response because people have always pointed to, genetic predispositions or chemical imbalances or these other, like there are lots of other reasons why people think this. So I'm just curious, lack of connection.
Well, that leads me to think these are kids that are lonely or people that are lonely. Who wants to feel lonely? That's a horrible feeling. And when kids feel lonely, they don't know what to do with this feeling. That oftentimes leads them to use, I get the comment a lot from kids that I just feel different from other kids. I just they can't find their people. Yeah, they're lonely. They don't have a place. We all want kind of a place in our communities or whatever. And so that leads to, I think, a lot of stress and pain and wanting to escape the feeling.
Yeah.
Good point.
Yeah. Yes.
probably more of a comment than a question, but I appreciate any comments from the panel, because there's a lot of wonderful people up front. But, you know, just listening to all the different conversations, and obviously the stress and anxiety and just the pressures of today, every time you open up the paper, you're reading another New York Times article about it or whatever. And so I guess I just feel like as a parent, and I'm very involved in our collaborative in the Ross Valley and what have you, but you know, I feel like we have the power in this room to make change. And, you know, what I feel going to probably my 100th parent ed, you know, session in Marin County, we all continue to talk and talk and talk about it, and it's not taking anything away from this panel by any means, but I feel like it's time for a revolution. It's time for a call to action. And what I don't find so much in Marin, and I didn't grow up there, I grew up in Ohio, but I'm going to tell you, what I see happening more back there is when parents don't like certain things the way that are going on in their town, and they're very upset, i.e. this just happened with a friend of mine in Stowe, Ohio, when they found out kids were robo-tripping on Robitussin. They went right to their superintendent and their principal of their high school, and immediately the principal's getting with the mayor, and they're now going and changing policy at the drugstores so that that stuff's behind the counter and there's no access to it by youth. But what I find in Marin, and again, I'm as forward-thinking as the rest of you in this room and probably as highly educated, we all want to, like, we're kind of afraid to really take action. We all want to talk about it. We're all sit in our own homes and worry as our kids are out every Friday, Saturday night wondering what they could be doing. But you hear the stories right and left, like, well, I didn't really want to call attention to the kids' addiction, but yet we have so much power. And we have the power of this panel. The people are, you know, working every day, and kids telling us, please, step up to the plate. So I think about the schools. Yes, it's a school-to-family partnership. There's no way we can do it alone. You know, if social media gets in the way and distracts kids and is way too much in their life and does cause depression to watch what everybody's doing on Facebook that you're not invited to, then we shouldn't allow phones in the school districts. We should say they get parked at the door. You don't need them for curriculum. And if you do need them for curriculum, then we need to go back out to the communities and raise the money to get real computer systems. And if we need iPads, we shouldn't have iPads that they can download anything that they want on it. That is another distraction. So let's let education be education. You know, so at least while they're at school, they're being educated. They don't have to be distracted by what they're missing in life. So I feel like those are just little solutions that I would love to see us be able to make actually happen, instead of hear all the reasons why, well, we really can't do that. We really can't take a firm stance, because I feel like people are working really, really hard every day, and yet the numbers for mental health are bigger than they've ever been.
Yeah.
And the rates of addiction are higher, and I'm hearing Marin people take out rehab insurance, you know, going in. And this was not my high school experience. I was never stressed. You know, I got into college, I did fine, but I worry that, you know, what are we really creating, but we're allowing it to happen.
Yeah.
And we are putting the pressure, and we are hovering like never before.
Yeah.
And so I think we all do need to look at ourselves in the mirror and go, you know, what part do I play in my kids' stress every day? I can't blame the school, but there's things the school could be doing differently, and certainly things we can be doing differently. So I say that as a partner with all of you in this room. You know, we have the power in this room right now to go back out and say, we're not doing this, and we're going to tell 5 other people, hey, we can make this change. If it doesn't feel right, why can't we say to our school, hey, this doesn't feel right? So I'm putting that out there, and I didn't mean to be on a soapbox, but
I think it's
strongly that we
fantastic. I
don't
think
have
you
to
should
walk
start
away
the
as
movement.
powerless.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. She should start the movement. I like that idea. Well, actually, does anybody?
Has the fire address
yeah,
what
do you
what
guys
we're
have some
seeing
thoughts?
in addiction treatment in both our residential program and our intensive outpatient and counseling is the parents in Marin don't want anyone to know that there's a substance use issue. And so they, you know, will want us to have these private, you know, they don't want to go to any group counseling, and they want private counseling. They will send their child out of the country or out of the area to a boarding school, which is, you know, wilderness treatment, and where we have so many resources right here, and so many, you know, we treat a lot of kids in Marin, and I know a lot of parents, and they don't know that, you know, the neighbor's kid is struggling with the same thing, and it's just a shameful issue. And I know, and there's this, like in Orange County, the families, there's a a college fund and a rehab fund. And because treatment is really expensive. And so it's best to just, start with counseling and listening to your kids struggling. Start from there.
So I noticed the time. I noticed we went. We're not technically over because we actually said that it ended at 8, 8:30, and 8:45 in 3 different places. So I feel really good about that. But I also want to be sensitive to anyone who thought that 8 was the end time. And I want to. I guess if anyone has a pressing question that they're just like, I need to get this answered before we go. Okay. So maybe what we can do is. Just if there's anything that you didn't get to say, that you feel like you want to say before we wrap it up? Anyone? No. It's all said so much wonderful stuff. Really, thank you so much. Before you leave, 2 more things. I know Linda has something to say. I also wanted to just ask everybody if there's anyone in here. When we introduced it, we said it would be really great if there was one thing that you knew that you could take away from this conversation and be able to actually implement, take some action on. So I'm just curious if everybody can first, silently take one moment and just see if you can really own one thing from tonight that you want to do differently or you want to take action on. I'm just going to give you 10 seconds to do that. And then if there's anyone who's willing to share.
Well, one thing that over 100,000 kids worldwide are going to do on February 3rd, including kids in the Larkspur Madera schools, is play at school. Global School Play Day is in its 2nd year, and it's not affiliated with any company. It's not for any type of commercial profit or anything movement that is growing and looking to really reintroduce the idea of connection and play in schools for kids K-12 and beyond. So that's something that we'll be doing here at Hall.
So playing more. So Eric's saying he's going to play more.
That's right.
Okay.
With the kiddos.
Okay, another. Yes, great. But by yourself too. Yes.
It was just such a great reminder that I do not role model managing my own anxiety and stress.
Yeah.
And my husband doesn't either.
So are you
it's
actually
wow.
saying that you're gonna
Yeah.
try to do something?
I mean, I have my Zen moments, but my
Right.
automatic is stress.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I'm sure you're not alone.
I'm going to find a screen time app and put it on my phone because I have been harping on my kids about screens. And I've been trying to, around them, always kind of go, and put it away, but I don't do it enough. So I'm going to track myself for a month.
Thank you. Awesome. Let us know what that is.
It's terrifying.
Yeah.
I think something that I've tried to do, but this just reinforces, and thank you to the panel, I really appreciate all of the candidness and just what you guys have shared with us. But one of the things just with my 2 kids, just set some time aside and not be like, how was school, what'd you do, what'd you learn, Just no expectations, silence is fine, let's walk the dog.
If I can say something about that, about spending time with your kids, what's really important is to ask them questions ask them their opinions on popular issues. Because then they feel, they feel so valued. Because they're like, wow, my opinion matters to an adult, to my mom, probably has her own opinion. And then once you can get into a discussion about something that your kid cares about, that's a hot button topic especially, it's so good. Those are the best conversations I've had with my parents are over not myself.
So